Well, I wish I could give you the tea, but mine's just a little bit tart, and that's why it's called Leah's Lemonade. And I'm excited today because I have someone who is really doing the work in the community for the greater good, and I'm really excited to talk to him. Antonio Driver, how are you doing?
I am doing amazing. How are you?
I'm doing super well, and I'm super excited to talk about you and an event, well, really a weekend you got coming up. And so I'm really excited because the I Am Awards, we got to talk about that. But
Yeah.
I think before we even get there, it's kind of a culmination for you. You've been doing the work. I mean, I think it's amazing that you do the work and now you want to shine light on other people. So talk to me about the I Am Awards because it's coming to the DMV area next weekend. So talk to me about that.
Yes. So the I Am Awards is my organization, Speak Out. It's our inaugural fundraising event, and the awards is simply what it is. It's I am, and it's to stand for I am trans, I am Black, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm non-binary. But it's to also highlight the work of those who are doing great things for the community on a larger scale, who may not necessarily get the acknowledgement from your big mainstream media, or they're not getting acknowledged on the Grammys or the Oscars or the Emmys. So it's a way for my organization to come in and say, hey, we see you and we appreciate you. And that is the bulk of it. And they could be honored for work that they've done in fashion, TV, film, humanitarian work, organizational work, health, building. It's an array of categories, writers and different things like that. And so lots of talent will be in the space. The event will be hosted by Vivica A. Fox, who we all know from many movies, and an inspiring actor, Jay Lamar, who has done a lot of like indie films and a lot of different things on Instagram and YouTube. And we're pairing those two together. And that's another form of us just showing like we're going to give opportunities to those who may not get these large opportunities. Lots of, different celebrity guests, some from like stars from like hit shows like the show Star, Amaya Scott. I don't know if you recall the show back in the early 2000s, Noah's Ark, Jensen Atwood. He's actually an honoree. George M. Johnson, who wrote the book All Boys Aren't Blue, is another honoree. So we have a array of people. I may have not mentioned everybody. Avery Wilson, performing. So it's going to be a great evening of celebration, but also just to highlight the work that those individuals do, and also just bring more acknowledgement to our organization and what we do on a broader scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about your organization, Speak Out Inc. So tell me, like, what were you thinking when you came up with this organization? Obviously, it appealed to something that you wanted, or you created maybe a space that you didn't have coming up. So talk about the importance of creating Speak Out Inc. and why you felt like it was important, because the organization represents over 6,000 people, which I think is amazing. So talk about your nonprofit.
Yeah, so Speak Out initially started, it wasn't anything that I intentionally like planned to say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to create a group, we're going to play the nonprofit and different things like that. I stumbled into everything and where we are today. And so it started as an online, actually it's a spinoff group of another Facebook group that we were a part of. And I was just an administrator in that group. And long story short, that group basically shut down, which forced me to like say, okay, we have all these people, all these great conversations, what's next? So I created a group called Speak Out. And it started with about 200 members. I wasn't for sure if people were going to follow me over and how it was going to take off. And that was 2016. Then it grew into, it was maybe 1,000 members, and we started to do like in-person events, and people were coming all over the country to come just to these small events here in DC. And the conversation still got heavy. There would be things talked about depression, coming out, health concerns. Of course, relationships are always a big hot topic in the group. And so someone came to me and was like, you're doing all of these things. I think that you should form a nonprofit. And I did. And I was like, okay, sure, that's easy. I did the paperwork, filed it. We got the status. And I literally sat on the status, the 501(c)(3) status for a whole year and a half. And then the IRS comes and say, y'all gonna file y'all taxes.
Y'all gonna do something with this or what?
Y'all gonna file taxes. I mean, it was a simple 2-minute fix because you can't lose or make anything. And so I filed it, and I go to one of the individuals who's now a board director. He's a vice president of the board. And I say, we have this, and I don't want to keep doing this paperwork if we're not going to be doing anything. And I'm thinking about letting it go. And he says to me, he says, well, if I were you, I wouldn't let it go. And so in that moment, I'm like, okay. And so I filed the paperwork, we get it going. And then literally 2 weeks later, another individual from the group comes to me and he says, hey, the state of Maryland is putting these grants out, and they want community-based organizations to apply for the grants. And I said, well, I don't know nothing about grant writing. I ain't never wrote no grant or anything. And so he said, Antonio, just look at the file and the paperwork and just tell me I can help you out, X, Y, and Z. So I'm reading the grant, and a little bit about me is that I've lived a number of places. I've done a lot of social work. My background is in social work, and I've done a lot of case management stuff. And so I'm reading this grant, and I'm like, I've done this before. I've literally done this work. 10 years ago in New York, I did this, and it was like a linkage to care, case management. And so I started looking over paperwork that I had and certificates I had for that program I ran in New York City. And for whatever reason, I was finding it. And I've moved a couple times since then. So I'm like, this must be destined for me to write. And so I literally just get on the computer and I write the program from how I ran it back in New York in 2010. And so I wasn't for sure. I didn't know nothing about writing a budget or anything. And so apparently it went well. Long story short, we get awarded this grant. So the first grant, it was, I think, $150,000 to do some work, and was able to hire some staff and stuff. And so I was like, okay, I guess we're on the right path. Help about 600 clients get back into care or get the services they need. And the same friend comes to me again. He's like, hey, there's another grant. It's a little different than the one you did this time. And I looked at it, I said, ain't no way in hell I'm about to drop. So we reached out to some community members who were in the group who are specializing in grant writing, and we wrote that grant and it got approved. It just, our operating budget went even skyrocket, and then all these grants just started rolling. So at this point, we've written 7 grants, and every grant that we have written has been I'm like, okay. So I'm to the point now where I'm quitting my day job to come and be the executive director, because I'm like, okay, now they can afford me for what I'm worth.
Right.
And so to kind of give you some of the services that we provide case management, HIV testing and linkage to care. We'll do HIV testing, STD testing. We have a mentorship program where we go into the DHS system, children who are in the foster care system and that are identified as LGBTQIA+. And we work with the parents, the foster parents, to help them train. Yeah, to help them, support them in supporting their youth that identify, but we also then mentor the youth as well, because oftentimes when I think about my younger self, a lot of the work I think about me when I was 14 and 15, and I wish I had a speak out that I could go to that really understood me from being a Black queer man of color, because a lot of organizations does the work, but when I work with the employees, I make sure that we don't just do it from a book based, let's be real. And everyone who works for us identifies on that spectrum somewhere. Yeah. So we really want to build true relationships and not to just preach something that we can't walk. So
yeah, and I wanted to dive into that a little bit, because I was reading your website, and y'all literally foster relationships for LGBTQ plus people of color. And, I find this in the feminism movement as well, as a Black woman, not always being to identify with the cause. Do you feel like as a man of color in the LGBTQ plus, sometimes the agenda for all LGBTQ plus does not identify to your experience as a person of color? Do you think that there are definitely levels and intricacies that apply that would not maybe apply to a Caucasian counterpart in the community?
Absolutely. And that is, it's so interesting that you say that, because what we do is we put the LGBTQIA plus in one box. And it's like we all sit but that's really not true.
Yeah.
One, you talking, let's just use a trans person that's talking about how I want to be identified. That's simply that. Me as a Black gay man, this is who I'm sexually attracted to. So the trans issues and the Black gay man's issues are technically a little different, because trans could just simply be, I see myself as a woman, but I still like women. So now am I a lesbian, trans lesbian, and different things like that. And so then to move the box onto just taking color and putting in the place. So a white lesbian has way more privilege than me as a Black gay man. She can walk down the street and maybe even worship, or even Black lesbian. And so I think that we're put in this box to try to like figure it all out, but we're all fighting for different things. And I think when you really comb it out, each person, and then you add race on it, may be fighting for something different, versus a lesbian, even a Black lesbian woman and a gay man. There's two different avenues. She could walk down the street and men like, oh, come on, we're gonna bring more friends and whatever, versus I could walk down the street and possibly get, beat up or killed or different things like that. And so, or a trans woman, I think that when you really pull that onion back, we are all really fighting for something different, and there most definitely are layers.
Yeah, and I think that that's why it's important, though, for the mentorship, right? The connection that you have in the group to create that for, again, people who identify and live kind of the same like life that you do. One of the things I wanted to go back to was you talked about the grants and kind of like it was alignment and everything kind of fell into place. And I love that, because I think that's always like a telltale sign that you're in the right avenue, right? Talk to me about, for you, because obviously it was a Facebook group kind of nonprofit turned into like this life mission, right? Like you're quitting your job. Talk to me about the moment, obviously not the grants, but like maybe there's a story where you were like, okay, this was the moment that I realized this is why I do this. Was there ever a moment with like mentorship or, an event? Was there just something that like it aligned, it clicked?
There's been multiple moments that have made sense on why I do it. And there were multiple feelings like, yes, I'm on the right path. Writing the grant most definitely was one, because I could feel like as I'm writing this, I'm like, there's no way they can deny this, because I got proof that it works. But, there was around 2018. I don't know if you recall the young 14-year-old who committed suicide for being bullied. Nigel Shelby. And so for me, I said to myself, I once was that kid. I once was that guy who felt alone and not heard and not seen, and so the work that we do is so important. And it's like seeing that this is still happening in 2018, and because he felt alone or being bullied or not being accepted, it's saying like I need to do more. And that's one of the reasons why the I Am Awards is here, because we're an organization in DC, but we have reach across the country. How do we make our message bigger, that you're not alone? And so I think that moment was like, yes, this is why I'm doing this, because I don't want to see. I was that boy. I was that person where, I had those thoughts where, it could have went left or right, but I found a group of people who identify with me in enough time, which I ultimately probably saved my life.
Yeah. Connection and identity are so important, especially for young kids. So I love that you guys are, sometimes a post or someone just being your friend on the internet can really change your gauge on what's going on. So I love what you were doing. I'm really excited. I love that you're in the DMV area. So hopefully, anybody watching this interview in the DMV, please come and support the I Am Awards. It's a fundraiser, but it's also going to be fabulous, honey. Also, there's multiple events, including a speed dating event, which I was like, listen, I'm straight, but shit, I was straight.
Speed dating event, and it's led by some notable it's led by individuals who are known for being dating coaches and have done the work online. They have online shows where they talk about love and relationships. I dibbled with the relationship that I'm known as a relationship coach, but because my work right now has definitely kept me like I'm gonna let y'all have that for
Yeah.
now. Yeah, but if you are out there single looking, April 30th at the Heck Warehouse, from 12 to 3, they will also be having that part of like speed dating, so you could come and possibly meet somebody.
Yes, honey. Listen. It's gonna be a weekend for everybody. So again, let everybody know where they can get tickets, when it is, and any other information you want folks to know.
Well, you can get all the information you need to know at speakoutusa.org, and that is speakoutusa.org again. And everything is on there, from the awards to some of the programs we have. If you want to join, if they're inspired, mentorships, all of the links are there.
And to donate. Okay.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's there too. Donate.
Okay, if you can't come through, make sure you send $1 or $2. Amen, amen. Antonio, thank you so much, and thank you for all the work that you're doing in our community, because our boys and girls need it. And I think that it's really important that people have a sense of community, no matter what walk of life or where they're at. So thank you again for all the work that you've been doing.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, lemonade stand, as I always say, grab a cup, throw it back, and sip on all of that.